Hey everyone, my name is Chris.
And this is Cam Dabula,
Ooh, nice. This sounds like Cam Dracula. So yeah, this is the C&C Board Game Factory.
a podcast and a video log and a brain trust and a quorum.
And think tank. That's the
Yeah.
big
Hey,
buzzword, right?
speaking of like big important words, I just Chris and I just had a political battle with Jordan Hopper of the No Cube Zone, and I ended up winning in a runoff election. So I don't know if you saw the end of that game, but I guess the tiebreaker was most swing counties. So I just 4-4 one tiebreaker map maker the gerrymandering game. So
Yeah, this was a very strange election because I think I was the Democrats. I don't. I was blue, right? And
yeah,
so
I was the red guys, which is weird. Jordan and I both most both must have our preferred color to green. I was almost those weenie green party guys.
well, this is the only election in history in which the third party decimated the Democrats. Like annihilated us because I was kind of figuring out the game for the first few moves, and then I set myself up really poorly. I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. You're mapping off districts. Like I had an idea of what to do, but I surely did not know how to play that game. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
strategically.
it's an interesting game, and I feel like that one got set up super weird because all of our constituents were like lumped into corners of the board. So you
Yeah,
had to find interesting ways to like loop in like other people's big pieces and make
yeah,
them not more, which I was Jordan and I were capable of doing. I guess that game because he'd played it before and I had played it the other night with Rob. So you were at a disadvantage because I had played a game of it already.
yeah. So I was just kind of goofing around, and it's it's a hex map, and you lay out four sticks on your turn, and you're just
Yeah,
trying to create gerrymandered ridiculous districts where you just come out ahead a teensy bit, kind of a thing. You know what I mean? So I
because you
liked it.
want the interesting thing about the game is you want the districts to be as close as possible because you don't want the powerful tokens of the opponent to like exist elsewhere on the board. So you want your score to be like 9 and their score to be like 8 in that district. Rope it off so that like places you know you're going to lose a bunch of the counties, but you're trying to like suck up as much power into your own gerrymandered county as possible so that like a large group of the other players' constituents' voices don't matter. It's a really good political game, actually.
It is. No, it's good. It's good. And so, yeah, you've been playing through. Have you managed to play every game on the Board Game Arena Advent calendar thing?
I am 11 for 11, baby.
Dang, nice. Yeah, if I didn't have the stupid move looming over my head and other plans we need to take care of, then
Oh, you dumb move to your dream job in a warm place.
it's terrible. It's terrible. What's the weather like right now in Iowa?
Actually, yesterday it was like 65 degrees probably, but today it's cold and rainy.
Okay. Yeah,
So
I'll be moving down to sunny old Florida where I'm sure I mean, I think the lowest that I got was like in the 60s. I actually flew out there this last week to go ahead and meet with what was it to get a condo set up and meet with the folks at the Dice Tower where I shall be working henceforth from next year from January.
that's
So
tight.
it's pretty exciting. But yeah, so I flew out there. I flew back, and then I took a COVID test when I got back, and I didn't have to get my brain tickled. They have like a short stick ones. You just swirl around in your nose.
And they're like, yeah, if the COVID didn't get all the way down here, it's probably not up there.
Yeah, I guess right. They figured it out. So
Yes.
your co-host Josh unfortunately got the brain tickler, and I didn't have to. So I'm gonna make fun of him about that. But yeah, I came back clean, no COVID.
No COVID. I'm not going to tell you how many times I've been tested. I am going to tell you 0 times.
I mean, I don't do anything, so otherwise I wouldn't have tested. If not for having walked through an airport with like several thousand people, most people have been around, man, in like 8 months, 9 months now, or whatever it was. 9 months, and so it was weird.
Well,
It was a weird
so
time.
my policy for testing has been if anybody I've been in contact with tests positive, when I've been in contact with them within the last 2 weeks, I'll get tested like immediately. And
Mm-hmm.
it just hasn't happened. Like there's been like people that I've been around have like been around people that have gotten it, but then they've gotten tested and come back negative. So every time, and like when that happens, I'll always like isolate for a couple days and be like, okay, well, let me know. I won't see anybody, while, I wait for you to hear. And then if you come back positive, then I'll go get tested.
Right.
And so I've isolated a lot of times, but I haven't needed to get tested because there have been no positive cases that I know of that I've been directly in contact with. So
Right.
I haven't flown on any planes or gotten any trains or ridden any automobiles. So
You haven't ridden in an automobile, Cam.
no, I'm Amish.
Horse-drawn buggy for you. So,
Yeah.
so I mean, I otherwise would never have gotten onto an airplane at this point because people, it's funny because people are like, an airplane's actually one of the safest places because the air recycles and this, that, and the other. But the same researchers who are like, airplanes are fairly safe, but airports are not.
Yeah. So if you can just drive out onto the tarmac, park, get on the plane.
throw your keys at the valet out there. So yeah, that'd be the ideal. That'd be I believe that is called owning a private jet. I'll look into it.
Yeah. Yes. We were playing Jackbox games last night, and actually two pretty relevant Quiplash answers. One person had this answer for a dangerous thing to do while driving, and they wrote, become Amish. And another person to the question, why can't penguins fly? His answer was racial profiling. Which
I like it.
I thought was also pretty funny. So, TSA joke.
TSA jokes. Oh man. So it's been some time. We've been able to think of. Oh, yes. Any other thoughts before we dive into Colored Cube Factory and other?
No, we should do that today instead of because like most of our episodes are us talking about stuff like this for 45 minutes.
Yeah. The people love it though. I think we have sure. The one person who watches this maybe.
Yeah, Jordan, this is for you, bud.
This is for you, Jordan. But yeah, I'm happy to jam out on game ideas, and that's what I like most about this. And the hanging out is good, man.
Yeah, it's very. Yeah, I love it too.
You've become an actual friend of mine, even though I only see you in the computer box.
Yeah, well, we'll once COVID's done, I'll come hang out with you. But
I'm excited about that.
As soon as the job at Dice Tower opens up for guy who talks too much, let me know, and then I'll just be your coworker.
I like it.
I'll move down to Florida and just.
Oh man. So you've had some ideas particularly about Colored Cube Factory. Last time that we got together, we jammed out a playtest session of it. We enjoyed ourselves. It's a decent skeleton, I think, to start with. And I think a lot of the things that we put in motion work. Like, a lot of things work, actually.
Yeah.
There are definitely a few areas where we said, okay, I see that this needs tweaking and stuff, but also just like the general feel, we have ideas of what we can do with it. So I think you've got a lot of ideas. Why don't we start with some of your thoughts, man?
Where I'm at, like if you watched the last episode highlights, I think the factory floor works really well, just really smooth. The other highlight I would have is I think that your majority worker placement thing is fun, though maybe not super realized in a 2-player game, which I think will probably mean we'll have to do some tweaking for a 2-player game. Mm-hmm. And like a la maybe like Dungeon Lords or Zolkin, which both check games, different designers, but like maybe like an Automa thing that goofs with that a little bit, or I don't know, maybe not. We'll see. But anyway, I think those are the highlights. I would say the low lights are. I would say my number one concern with the game would be, there's like this mechanism we have in there right now where like you have storage and then you have carts, and you essentially are doing like paying for the same thing twice when you upgrade them. that I think we could either find a way to tweak or to streamline. And then I would say the other low light for me is that there isn't present yet one aspect of the game that makes a player like, oh man, this is really unique or really exciting, or it doesn't, like, we still need a zazz of the game, which I think should come after we create the skeleton of it. I don't think my skeleton's like neon or any like tie-dyed or anything underneath. Like, he is in the flesh, you know. So
Yeah, the wow factor. Like I think that I think certain things could be the wow factor, either that majority worker placement thing or the simultaneous running of your factory. So we have to figure out either is something like what is going to be kind of that like punchy wow factor part and how to emphasize it, or if there just isn't really one and we need to make sure that there is, and whatever that thing, it can be kind of front and center, like the Zolkin gears, front and center.
yeah.
Like it's the Gears game. So
Well, if we can make every aspect of the game fun, that would be cool. So I think that's a thing we can make happen. I think right now the game has two parts, and they can both be fun.
mm-hmm.
And so before this, we kind of were talking like what we're talking today. And just to reiterate, I think it's a good idea for us to workshop some ideas for what we can do with what we have right now, not to bloat the game, but really like, hey, what is some kind of neat stuff we could do to make these parts of the game really exciting? And so I've had a few thoughts. I'm guessing that you probably have as well. Um, so yeah, that's where we're at today.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the biggest low light I think of is for sure the redundancy of the storage and the carts, because as I envisioned them, I definitely envisaged something more fun and interesting. And yeah, when we were playing it, the execution was really just you got to buy two things to do one task. So if we can cut that out or use the carts for something different, maybe have the same component idea but put it in a different place in the flowchart of the factory floor. I think that that could be really good. Like for example, the way that we had the flowchart set up, once you run your factory floor, you upgrade the cubes, you duplicate your cubes, you do all that stuff, right? And then after that, all the cubes go one of three places, right? They either go to complete a contract, or they go into your storage so they can get run through again in the next loop, or they get sold off for the money. And so, like the first thought that I had was with the carts, like depending on how many carts you buy, depending on how many carts you have, carts are the things you can either use to, like, I have 4 capacity of carts, and I have 6 cubes. So the most that I could either fulfill contracts with and or move into storage would be 4, right? My cart capacity, and then those excess beyond that, so the 2 remaining of my 6 must get sold off. Something like, so you can have some sort of built-in limiter, and that way it's a dual-purpose limiter, or you can just cut carts out completely. That's kind of where I've been thinking.
Yeah. I've had a little bit more esoteric thought on the entire concept of storage and carts.
Mm-hmm.
That probably is a little ambitious, but I guess I might as well just bring it up.
Do it, yeah.
I've been thinking lately that one of the things that could lead to some problems in the game, I think, are, we sort of have this idea of like a colored cube factory as like an engine thing, and we want it to be smooth and not super AP, but like an interesting game where you're like building an engine and you have a production line. Part of me thinks that in this game, what creates colored cubes shouldn't necessarily be other colored cubes. And by which I mean to say, you'd actually be collecting different resources to output colored cubes. And I don't like. Again, I'm not married to this idea, so I just kind of want to parse it out with you here and then like chew on it. But what if we took the concept of like during the worker placement and the bonuses and stuff, you like used workers to like go buy cubes so you could like, use those cubes with your cubes in storage to create more cubes, to send part of them back to storage to create them into better cubes, which is like, again, this is not the most thematic game of all time, but that's not really how factories work. It's more we take something that's not a cube and turn it into a cube because the cube is the goal. And so the entire concept is like, okay, well, we have yellow stuff and orange stuff, and this particular smasher lets you take 2 of any resource and turn it into 1 green cube. But the later smashers like actually let you take 2 yellows and a purple and make 2 cubes of like the color of your choice. And so it's more of like a puzzle of like, how am I going to get the stuff I need to fill like to create the cubes that I want, but like I'm actually doing something with them no matter what once they're through my production line. And now you're like, you make the resources that you take more of a thing, so that like your storage might be, because like, oh, I'm getting a great deal because like for whatever reason I can pick up a lot of white stuff this round, but like I don't know if I'll need it, but it's like I can get it really easily, and so I'm going to keep this in my storage. So that's kind of where I'm at on like a conceptual level. Is what if we tweaked the input for colored cubes to not be colored cubes and just have the output be colored cubes, which I want you to weigh in on in just a second. But my reasoning behind that is another idea that I've had, and that is one of the things you can do with your colored cubes is you can ship them off to market for money. In other words, not part of a contract, but you just get paid for the cubes you make.
Mm-hmm.
But those go into a market pile that's in front of you. And if somebody needs a colored cube for to complete a contract, they're basically using you as a contractor. And when they buy that cube, you don't get paid more money, but you do get a point if somebody buys one of your cubes. And it's not from them, you just get a point also.
Right.
And so you make the cubes that you're outputting, they may be more meaningful. Like if there's a huge deficit of green cubes, and you can make green cubes really easily, you may get a lot of points by producing green cubes. I don't know. That's just kind of a thought I had.
I like it. I like the ambition in it, right? Because it's a to use an overused corporate lingo speak type thing. It's a good paradigm shift, right? Because the way that I always envisioned the game was turn cubes into more cubes, right? You can turn 2 whites into a red, and then put in storage and come through again, and now you have a red cube to mash with another red cube to turn into a yellow or whatever. And so what you're saying is at this point, our worker placement and like those basic actions do not really get you cubes, except for buying cubes from other players and getting them points.
Yeah, they'll get your resources, which I'm not trying to overcomplicate the game. I don't think there should be a bunch of colors of cubes, and I don't think there should be a bunch of different resources. Mm-hmm. I think there should be 2 or 3 resources and 4 or 5 colors of cubes, right? And I think it should be very easy to make a couple of the colors of cubes, and a little more involved to make a couple of the colors of cubes, and then complicated to make like that final color. But I think you can do that with a small amount of different varieties of resources. It's just that the machines you buy, have interesting input requirements.
It's certainly more thematically appropriate, because if I if we make iPhone, because what exists in its current state with building cubes and then rerunning those same built cubes and
Yeah.
mashing them would be like if I had a factory that built iPhone 4s and then I sold 3 of them and I kept one, and then next round I built an iPhone 5, and then the next round I mashed the two together and made an iPhone 9. Like that's its current existence.
Yeah. And which is kind of funny. Like, I think it's kind of funny. It would also be kind of funny to turn the entire idea on its head, and your resources are like completed pieces of technology and like textiles and stuff, and you mash them into the machine and it turns it into like cubes.
If you like white cubes are fax machines, and then green cubes are Palm Pilots, and then you mash them together and you create like a smartphone. Like that, it'd be fun, tongue
Oh
in
no,
cheek.
I was thinking it'd be funnier if, like, like the white resources was T-shirts, and like the green resources like, or like the yellow resources like telephones, and then you mash a white T-shirt and a yellow telephone together, and it comes out as a green cube.
What would that green cube be, Cam?
It's like Devo. It's like a devolution of a factory.
Okay, so your idea, I'm very intrigued by this. Like I like it. I'm yeah, this is interesting, right? So if you take you make, you said what, like 4-ish basic resources?
Well, yeah. So, and again, I think that like we should chew on all these ideas and then like come back next week if it's possible to like have more concrete concepts of these ideas. But I think, yeah, I don't think it'd be a bad idea to look at having resources and cubes, and you get resources to make cubes.
Interesting. Okay, and so the cubes would still go off to one side to fulfill contracts, or they would get sold off to this shared market. Because we talked about the shared market before, and I really liked it, and I've been thinking about that a lot.
Yeah.
And I like that idea of the things that you sell go to market, but that market is actually like a place on the central board where people can purchase from and say, oh, I want that red cube. Cam has a red cube. Chris has a red cube. I'm going to buy it from Chris because he has fewer points right now, and so it also becomes a little bit of a leveling mechanism, and not just a pure catch up, but
Right.
but you could really focus on trying to be so efficient that you put all of your cubes into contracts and get lots of contract points, whereas someone else is fulfilling contracts but also selling to that market and getting that 1 point here. And
Well,
then,
have you
and then someone's buying 2 cubes and I get another 2 points, and now by supplying the market you get more points as well.
have you played Alma Mater yet?
I haven't, no.
Okay, so that's the new one from the Coimbra team, or Gili and Brasini. The two Italian bros where one's a lady, and they pretty much make all their games together. I don't know, maybe they're, who knows, or maybe there's buddies. It's 2020, like a guy and a lady game designer who make all their games together. Don't have to be Inca and Marcus Brand.
True.
Also, I just assume that's a guy and a lady who are married. It could be a brother and a sister, or it could be like that could be 2 ladies or 2 guys, or a dinosaur and a cat. So like I don't really know. I just assume that Inca and Marcus is the name of a lady and a guy who are married, and they make The Village and Rajas of the Ganges.
Yeah, I think they're a married couple. So,
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there we go. So, Alma Mater would get back to the original point, and not like my little bebop and scatting on like, game design teams. It has this really interesting concept where you create your own color of textbooks. So, like, if you're red, you make red books. And every time you make a book, you get to choose to keep it in your supply, or you can put it up on this track, where if it sits on the track at the end of every round, it makes you a passive income. Every book you have on the track earns you $1. Then, if somebody wants to buy those books from you, they can. And the more books you have on the track, like, the cheaper they are to buy. So, like, because you start from like left to right, and so like if I have one book, it might be like $4, but then the next book is 3, then 3, then 3, then 2, then 2. I'm not saying do that concept. And also it earns you points too, because if well, or maybe it earns the other. For whatever reason, I can't remember. Basically, when somebody buys a book, if it's on a spot that hasn't been flipped, it's flipped, and then I think it earns the player who buys the book points. Anyway, what I'm thinking is maybe you have a little tray in front of you where you can send your goods, and when you place a good there, you earn money for it, and basically that tray sits there for the next round, and maybe at the end of the round you can empty it if you want, so the stuff's no longer for sale, or you could leave it up there if you want it to still be for sale. But you have a finite amount of space, and then when somebody pulls one off of there to buy it, it scores you an amount of points, either relative to the type of cube it is, or relative to, some other arbitrary rule we make up, or just a flat, it gets you a point. But I think that could be a compelling thing. It's as I look around this factory, I see that these types of things are needed. And that could be cool. Or each player could have a specific type of machine that where they make one specific type of cube that other players need. I don't know. That makes it too much, I think, at that point. But I think that could play into a bunch of different little ideas I had, going forward. But I'm not married to the idea of resources creating cubes. I like the idea of selling cubes to a market to be bought by other players for points and stuff, though. But I was like, well, how can you make it so that other players would want to buy those cubes? And that is make it trickier to make certain types of cubes. I don't know.
Yeah, so maybe it's made so that it yeah, exactly. How do you make the cube market enticing? Is it only going to be worth a few points over the course of the whole game, or can it be kind of a viable strategy to load up the market with lots of cubes and become a very popular seller, basically? That's a cool thought. That's interesting.
Here's actually a thought too, is maybe you don't do this gets a little more complicated, but this could be a fun aspect of the game, is maybe you don't get money for the cubes that you put up there, but there's a little privacy screen, and you put up cubes you're selling to the market, and then at the end of the round you lift the screen, and whatever cube is the most scarce earns a certain amount of points, and then it goes down from there. And then every cube that doesn't earn points earns $1 or something. But that's getting a little wacky at that point.
It's getting a little bit, yeah. Because you could do it without the privacy screen, but you want to make the simultaneous running of the factories, that portion of the game, you want to make it clean and easy and stuff. So I guess a privacy screen would not be a bad idea, because yeah, I guess my gut reaction to that is I would be concerned that...
Well, that seems a little bloated to me at that point.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of bloat. And also I think that the reward of the market, right, when you sell cubes and it goes into a market on the central board, I'm thinking that there's more of that long-term repercussion for scarcity and demand, right? Whereas with this idea of everyone lift up your screen, which cube has the fewest out there, yada yada. That's the short term. That's the immediate. And white cubes with the fewest produced, that earns points. But in the actual long term market, there's 70 white cubes. Then, I feel like there's a better way to represent scarcity and demand, and I think that's more of a long term view approach to it.
Here's an idea. Here's my idea. And this is so I think we both like the idea of a market you sell to, but also that can get bought from. Mm-hmm. And here's an idea to make it less bloated and make it be worth points. And I normally like to state things positively, but in this case, stating something negatively might be cool.
Okay.
So you can sell cubes to the market where you have a little area that's your market, right?
Mm-hmm.
And other players can buy cubes from that market. and you get pretty good monetary rewards for selling to the market. At the end of the game, you lose points based on like who has the most cubes remaining in their market. In other words, who's putting too much supply out there that there's no demand for. So you can get a good premium on the cubes you send to the market, but if you send a bunch of cubes to the market that nobody wants, it's gonna be worth, like, it could be the kind of thing where, like, at the end, if I have 6 cubes in the market and you have 3 and somebody else has 1, you know, the person who has 1 loses 0 points. You know, you like let's say you wipe 1 from everybody, and then you lose a set collection type of points for the cubes you have in. So if I have 3 cubes in the market, you have 5, and Jonathan has 7, everybody takes out 3 cubes. So now you have 2, and you lose 3 points. And Jonathan still has 4, and he loses 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 points. He loses 10 points for having 4 cubes in the market.
Okay. What then would be the incentive to? So will there be enough incentive to purchase cubes from other players if that's the case? Knowing, I could buy this cube from Cam to help me fulfill this 8-point contract, but if I leave it out there, he's going to have like 7 cubes at the end of the game. I'd rather him just lose all those points.
That's a good point.
I think that would be ultimately more pronounced in a 2-player game. This is what I notice in 2-player games, right? Is that anytime that I have the option in a 2-player game to benefit myself or hurt you, they're equal, right? It's a 0-sum game in a 2-player game. 3 or 4 players, me gaining 8 points versus me hurting you 10 points are not, or me getting 10 points, you hurting 10 points are not equivalent because there's a third party. I would rather gain the points. So
yeah.
So that's a thought. But I mean, I still worry that then in the 3-player game, everyone says, okay, you and me buy from each other and just leave Cam in the dust.
Yeah, true. And then it makes the game political, and we want this to be a Euro. So yes.
Yeah.
Good point. Okay, let's scratch that. But I think it's probably now time that we've chatted about these 2 things enough to like move on to the next ideas. But I think we both really like the idea of a market that you sell to and can get you some point rewards if people buy from you. So I think let's really chew on that for the next episode of this. And then I think we both are intrigued by the idea of resources used to create the cubes. So I think maybe if either of us can come back with an idea of how that would work, I think that's something we should stick a pin in and be like, okay, if we come up with a real idea of how this would be a thing. But I think that more importantly, we should look at this market, because I think we're both really into the idea of the market, right?
I 100% want this market in in some implementation, and whether that have something like a majorities thing or an anti-majorities thing or something of a fun flair to it. Maybe really quick to meld together some of your ideas. If the market has, let's use our 4 colors of cubes: white, red, yellow, green. Let's say that the market has no red cubes right now, like fewest red, then green, yellow, then white, right? Like that's the majority thing, right? Since there's the most white cubes, any white cubes I sell to the market are worth the fewest amount of coins, but any red cubes, because they have the fewest, maybe that's worth the most or something like that, instead of their intrinsic value of green being worth the most. That's a maybe, right? Because that plays then with the idea of demand and supply. But I also imagine that
you said stuff in the market, like what there's not a lot of, is worth points.
Could be worth points, or could be worth more money, like a bonus if you sell it.
You have 7 white cubes in the market total, and like 4 red cubes in the market. The red cubes would be worth points because they got bought more, or there were less of them, and so they're a more highly prized market commodity at the end of the game.
I was thinking at the end of each round when you sell to the market, like during that
Oh, okay.
during that selling phase, how much is in the market could be indicative of points or money that you get, like how much money you get.
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. I think we should have a hard economy on the monetary value of cubes going to the market.
Okay.
I think we should have a soft economy on the amount of points, and I think we need to figure out how to do that.
Okay.
Because then because I think knowing what money you'll get for a cube if you sell it will help drive the euro part of the game, where it's like, okay, I need to have $15 going into this next round because I want to buy a new machine, because I want to upgrade this thing. You know what I mean? But as far as go, I think you need to be intelligent about how you score points. And like that's what makes games interesting, is like, because I think a lot of like what makes a game fun is, how do I turn my hard economy of money into like the points I want? Because like I don't love it when like basically like I love terraforming Mars, but one of the things I like the least about it is just like at the end of the day, if you have so much money, you're just going to do really well. But this game, like I want it to be where like, yeah, you can make a bunch of money and make a good factory, but you also have to figure out how to get points.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you have $1 million. Like if you fall behind on money, that's your fault, and you won't have the resources to get the points. But I don't want somebody to be able to win the game just by having the most money.
Yeah. Yep.
Like there has to be a trade-off where like at a certain point, like we're playing Marco Polo right now, I could go have $90 if I really wanted to, but my guy would never move, and I would never fulfill contracts, and I would never, have, if I just wanted money, I could focus every die on getting money,
Yes.
It's how you use the money and how you make the choice, like, okay, I need a little more money so that I can accomplish this goal, and I have to make the sacrifice with this, finite worker resource I have to go get one more dollar so I can do this thing that's going to get me points. And I think that's the trade-off I think we're looking for.
Yep, I'd agree with that.
So that's why I like the idea of having like the opportunity cost of selling a cube always be like well known, whereas like you want to be tactical about how you get points. And so I think the idea of like, okay, well, let's find a way to fiddle with like the points based on majorities and supplies and demands, a really good idea, but I don't think it's a good idea for money.
Okay, cool. I dig it.
Are we on the same page there or no?
I agree. Yeah.
Okay.
I like it.
Okay, so I think that's awesome. I think we think about that. Let's find one more concept to chew on. I have one more thing that I've been thinking about a lot, but I haven't quite broken through the glass yet. But okay. I think I'm pretty close. And I think that it's great that we have contracts to fill and to market. But I think the game would be fun if we had one more place to put cubes. And again, I'm not trying to bloat the game. I just think that it's missing like a certain little zip of like, okay, I can keep my cubes, I can sell my cubes, I can contract my cubes. I was thinking that we need some sort of like, I don't know if it's like an infrastructure or like, but I think we need like a little cube puzzle that might be the same for everybody. It might be different for everybody. But I think what we need is a little spot that's kind of like, I was talking about Trismegistus last time. Okay. Like a little Philosopher's Stone. And you haven't played Trismegistus, right?
I have once. I didn't play all the right rules per the teacher, but most of the right rules.
So when you complete, contracts or spend gold in that game, you unlock these little things you can place into your Philosopher's Stone.
And that's kind of that's like the 3x3 grid area, right?
And once you like make a chain, you get what like the benefits on either side of the chain.
Yeah.
And I think that could be a neat idea for a little puzzle you have during the course of the game, and it might even be like we played Barrage the other day. Let's take a couple concepts together. It's not just Barrage; it's Terra Mystica. It's Gaia Project. But basically, maybe you have a faction or like a board that's different than everybody else, but basically when you place certain cubes certain places, you can do things to unlock um, either some instant boosts, or maybe if we have some asymmetrical player powers like permanent bonuses or just points. And so whether it's like a little puzzle where you have to like build out using certain colors of cubes, it would be the kind of thing where if you focused your entire game on finishing it, you could, but would it win you the game? I don't know. But it would be more the kind of thing where you build in the direction you want to build, like Trismegistus or Barrage, where, okay, I want to try to get this stuff, so I'm building my cubes out this way. And so, the easiest thing to do would just be like a ladder where it's like, okay, when I do, like I start in this corner, and I can build out this way for each of these like unlocks passive bonuses, but as I go on, I can start building up. And as I build up, it's like leveling up the stuff I've already unlocked, or like a stairway to like points. But if I want the most points, like I build all the way out and all the way up. But you could do it. You could do it in so many different ways, where it's like, okay, you could have 5 or 6 different things where they all are different little puzzles. If we really wanted to have like really asymmetrical stuff, but the concept would be like, I can use cubes for points or money. This is like I'm taking these cubes out of my economy, and these do entirely different stuff. And we could choose whether it's like it's just points, or whether it's a delayed gratification, or whether it's an instant gratification. For cool abilities. There could be all sorts of different ideas, but I think it would just be fun to have a little puzzle that's your own, that has like a small spatial element to it. Like, okay, I have to either put the right colors of cubes in here, or maybe like, at least like no 2 colors of cubes can touch orthogonally, and maybe, like I said, maybe we can get as wild with it as we want, where everything's super asymmetrical, and the German factory has a different rule than the United States factory has a different rule than the Mars factory, right? But I think that could be something that would be really fun, like a really compelling part of it, to add that little like, oh, I want to use, like, I want to use some of these cubes here, and if I use them here early, I'm going to boost the power of my factory a lot, but I'm not completing these contracts early in the game, and maybe we have like a kind of, and I'm comparing to a lot of games right now. Have you played Sidereal Confluence?
I have not. No.
Okay, but in that game, there's basically contracts, but what you're doing is unlocking new technologies, and you take a lot of your cubes, because it's a cube game. You take a lot of cubes out of your economy in order to fund these projects, but the earlier in the game you fund a specific project, the more points it's worth. So kind of think Castles of Burgundy, where if I fill an area out early, it's worth more points. And so maybe contracts could be kind of like that, where it's like, okay, well, the opportunity cost of like building my engine or filling out my board is that if I complete this contract in round 1, I get the round 1 bonus, which is 4 more points than if I fill it out in round 2, or something like that. I'd want a lot of different ways with it, but I think it's a really open concept. But I think having one more place that's just your own place to spend cubes over the course of the entire game would make this game really exciting.
That's cool. That's a cool thought, because I know that we had discussions a few weeks back about like maybe instead of selling to the market, you do something whatever. And I think that we are now really invested in this idea of having the market, because it's when we played our demo of it, it was a good way to get money back in.
Yeah.
You're spending a lot of money on your turn, and then you're banking that you're able to plan very well. Okay, I know which cubes I want to put over into the contracts on the side. I know which cubes are going to go out to the market so I can get money. But now, if you have a little this Trismegistus board or like a almost like a Sagrada board that you're like punching cubes into, like a little
Yeah.
grid or a little something.
But it could be what I mean. It could be a barrage board reverse. It could be a Gaia project board reversed, where it's like, hey, as you fill this in left to right, like you're increasing your income or you're increasing your capacity or but you also can place it in places that are just going to get you a point income or a special ability that only you have. But whatever we do, I think we can make a really good go of it.
That's cool. That's cool. That would be. I think that could be that little bit of like that little zip, that
I
you were
think
talking about earlier.
don't think it bloats the game because if we and especially if we take away the third option of restoring your cubes,
Hmm.
then that really doesn't bloat the game at all.
Would there
But
still be a storage thing for? Okay, really quick.
yeah,
If we implement all the changes that we're talking about, if we change it from resources turn into cubes instead of cubes into other cubes, if you can still store extra resources, like you mentioned, like, oh, I got a deal by getting this majority on getting a bunch of
yeah,
white resources. I'm not going to use them all, so I'll put some into storage. Like, I still see purpose in storage, but
yeah,
maybe not in storing your end product. Your end product
right,
goes somewhere.
yeah. So what I'm thinking is, I don't think at this juncture we marry to the idea of resources equal cubes or resources become cubes. I think we can still play with cubes becoming cubes.
Okay.
And I think we can still play with being able to store cubes. But I think that ultimately we're looking for the most streamlined possible way to do this
Hmm.
and also the most compelling way to do this. And I think the things we don't marry ourselves to is I think right now we have storage, but we don't marry ourselves to the final product having a restorage element. Um, I think we find the most efficient and fun way to do it. And I think we can determine that once we kind of hammer out the market and once we kind of hammer out this final way to use cubes, and once we sort of hammer out like what do contracts truly do for you, I think the storage stuff. I think we just leave it as it is for right now. We leave the cube production as it is for right now, and come back and hit that once we're a little more certain with like the more interesting now elements of the game that I think we want to add to it. And so, honestly, and maybe you're in the same place, maybe you're not, but I think like for our next thing is maybe draw up some like here's some ideas for like your own personal board, and then here's some ideas for rules for how like the cubes going into the market work. And I think if we have some good ideas for that, the rest will fall into place as we develop.
Okay. I dig it. I dig it. So my thought is we should keep the storage. I think we should just outright nix the carts, right? So like the two-step storage thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Oh, same. I also think
Yeah.
that.
So I think we just nix the carts completely. And so right now we have the three prong. So like you have your inputs go into the factory floor and then they go into the three areas. They can go back into storage, go to the market, or go to contracts. We'll develop a fourth avenue and nix the carts. And so I think that'll streamline the player board a little bit, but add a little bit of zazz, a little bit of zip. Uh, and
Yeah, and
yeah,
I think it's a modular thing where like the final place you can send it is just like a player board that sits down right next to the one. Everybody has a uniform, their color board, right? And
yeah.
then like you get tossed like two back offices, and you're like, oh, I want to be this back office today. Boop, and that's like your modular thing that either they all work the same way, but have slightly different rewards. And I mean, it could be the kind of thing where everything's uniform, but I think that everybody inherently likes asymmetrical stuff because it makes every new play of the game kind of interesting. It's like, oh, I got this one today, and that's kind of fun because I've never played with this one before. And
Right.
that doesn't necessarily need to be player powers, but it could. But I like the idea of unlockable player powers versus inherent innate player powers where like you don't have to unlock that. I love that about Barrage, where it's like, you know what, this game isn't going where I need that. I'm not going to divert resources to unlocking it.
Okay.
And that's not to say that if we have asymmetrical boards, everybody doesn't start with something innate. Again, going back to Barrage, which I think is one of the most compelling. Here's the thing: it doesn't. I'm not trying to make Barrage here, but what I'm saying is it has one of the most like just straight up fun things in the whole thing, where it's like, oh, I get to pick this combo of like a main factory and then like an assistant right at the beginning of the game, and then like it's so exciting, and you're like, oh, this is cool. Like I get to be these guys today, and you draft them, and like I don't know, that gets me jazzed, and I think it gets other people jazzed too, right?
Oh yeah, I mean it's definitely a trendy thing in the board game world because it adds excitement at the start of a
Yeah,
game. From the
yeah,
get
and
go.
like so you have this fun like tomorrow I'm gonna play Twilight Imperium expansion for the first time with my buddies, and we're like all like buzzing about like, oh, should we be one of the new races or see like one of the current races like with their extra stuff, and like that's just I mean it's fun, and I think you can bring that into a dense Euro and make it exciting. The problem you run into is then like again, to mention the game I've just been mentioning a bunch, Barrage, you do have combos that seem better than others, and you do have like, you know what, I don't think this character is as good. Like one ability is like way better than the others. So like
Mhm.
we don't have to like necessarily go down the road too much with special abilities if we're trying to make a really balanced game. Um, but I think at a certain point, people also are okay with dealing with that if they love the game. It's just like, oh yeah, I don't mind being this faction because they're fun to play, and I've played this game like 100 times, and my chances of winning, are still pretty high, even though
Right.
these guys are slightly less good. So
Right. Yeah, I mean I like the idea of um I like one of the things I enjoy is a lot of games you have like a beginner or like a first game or like I don't want to call it anything negative sounding, but like you either have the symmetric side of your boards or you can flip them over to the asymmetric. Architects of the West Kingdom does that, and given their level of asymmetry in Architects is very minimal compared to like some of the other games we're talking about. But I still appreciate that for the person that's like, oh, the one that can use gold as glass is overpowered. Or just play on the A
yeah,
sides. You know what I mean? Just play on
yeah,
the everyone's uniform. So you could have something like that where the fourth area that you could divert your cubes to is just the same for everyone. And if someone used it better than you, they just used it better than you. But you can
sure.
also flip it over, and then once you flip it over, it could become all the benefits are just in different places, so you have to fill in differently. Or it could be, hey, this player is playing Sudoku, and this player can only shove the highest level purple cubes in here, but when they do that, it's incredible the benefits they get. And someone else is like, the more cubes that you put on here, you're playing this kind of a investment game. So you can yoink them off at the end of a round and get a small benefit, or you can build it up for 3 rounds and then yoink them off or whatever. You know what I mean? So like,
And I think we're on the same page, and I think you and I both love the idea of what if everybody's playing a little bit different game, you
mhm,
know? And like I think that's really present in your like little Final Fantasy like game idea that we talked about earlier. And I think that's kind of like present in like my little like wizard game where it's like, hey, we're all doing different worker placement stuff. So I think we're like I think that would work. I think we're both kind of like jazzed about an aspect of the game like that. So I think we've had a great discussion about two things that really should be in the game. And so I don't know if we should add any more onto our homework list for this next episode.
I think that this is good. I think this is good, and having the discussion so that we're both kind of on the same page of what we're envisioning, I think is really important. Let's draw up some ideas, and then next week we can kind of come back together and say, hey, here's what I was thinking for that fourth area you can divest cubes off into, or
Yeah.
hey, this is what I was thinking for the market, or something.
Yeah, dude, I love it. And I also love that I think, have had a good conversation about this because I drank a cup of coffee and a LaCroix while we were doing this. And I really need to go to the bathroom now.
All right,
So,
man.
yeah, so good episode of the C&C Factory. Do we need to go through anything else, do you think?
No, I think that learning that drinking an entire coffee and a LaCroix makes you go to the bathroom, that's a very good thing that make you go,
Well, yeah, I think that we have some really good stuff to work with, and I'm expecting great results from both of us.
Good. I would expect nothing less. So
Yeah.
I think with that, we should sign off, man.
Yeah, that was a good episode.
All right, Cam Dabulous, you have a good one.
Hey, you too, man. Let's I don't know what you're up to tonight, but if you got some time, we should play a board game or something.
I think tonight's going to be date night for Wendy and I, but tomorrow I'll probably be free.
It is a chance I'll be free, but it's unlikely because we may be recording my video project tomorrow, the Variety Society. I've told you about that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your video game one with the paintings in the back.
But that could always not happen, so definitely worth hitting me up, see if I'm free a few hours. So hey, and I'll hit you up also. So
all right, cool, man.
Hey, you have a good one, dude. Good hanging with you.